It's time for the Brouhaha Sports Show. Brouhaha Sports with award-winning sports writer Dale McKee and co-host Marshall Wood. Talking sports with the legends of the game and famous sports personalities. Brouhaha! Now to Marshall and Dale with tonight's guest.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brouhaha. Dale, you ready for another round?
Oh, man, yeah.
Always ready, aren't you?
I'm ready. Ready to go, Coach. Put me in, Coach.
Put him in.
Put me in, Coach.
Well, listen, college football is starting to really get to swinging. And it didn't take long.
Yeah,
a couple of weeks
once you start getting into SEC play, you should get some good games, and then I say good games, more competitive games. Yeah. We still do have some lopsided game. I guess the game I was most surprised over was Ole Miss's easy win over Georgia Tech. Yeah. I mean, score-wise, you know.
But if you watch Georgia Tech, what they did, a week ago, you know.
Well, they played Clemson pretty well.
That's what I'm talking about. I don't know if it was a week or 2 weeks ago, but I mean that was they played them pretty good for a couple of 3 quarters. That's not what Ole Miss certainly. Ole Miss dominated.
Ole Miss got them after him on that first drive, and they never let up. I mean, it went down about 3 or 4 plays and scored.
Yeah.
So that was surprising.
I thought I saw. I watched it. It looked to me, and that. Like Dart might have won the locker room during that game with a couple of plays he made, putting his head down, running over folks. And I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, I think that's going to be the guy.
Yeah, he seems to be like the lead horse right now in the locker room. And I think we had somebody on the show earlier, maybe a month or so ago, and I'm not sure, but I remember we asked him about the quarterback situation in Oxford, and I think he kind of told us that who wins the locker room is going to win the battle on the field.
We did. I remember that. I guess that's where that seed, now that you mention it, that locker room deal was playing in my mind because that's what I saw Saturday out of him.
I did too.
They're run heavy, man. I mean, they line up and run that football. And, I mean, you know what they say. If you want to win championships, you got to run the ball and play defense. So, I mean, that seems to be the modus operandi that Coach Kiffin is employing.
I've always had a simple philosophy about football. If you control the ball, you control the game. You control the clock, you control the game, and you put the other team at a disadvantage right off from the start.
That's why in high school, typically, that the wing T types of offensive has just given me so much trouble when we faced them through the years, in Wayne County, and I mean, it's just like sitting up there just watching and you can't do a doggone thing about it.
Well, if you go back in history all through the Mississippi high school, of course, I know football's changed a lot in high school football the last 20 years, probably 15 to 20, they've opened it up and they're copying the college game and things like that. I think the pros are even copying the college game to a simple degree and some of the quarterbacks in some of the places. But in the end, the single wing or wing T, or what we want to call it, they've probably won more state championships than anybody else.
Yeah. I've heard people talk about that at the high school level. Well, you're going to run the wing T. You can't. You're not going to. You need to get these players in space and let's see what they can do so they can be recruited. And all this kind of stuff. And I mean, I've heard that a lot through the years, and I don't know if you have or not. But you know what? And I may have said this on this show one time before. There's a little team over there in Jefferson Davis County that's won a lot of state championships running that kind of offense, and they've had all kind of players signing. They had 9 D1 players on D1 rosters at one time. So what are they? 3A?
Yes.
So that dog don't hunt.
Yeah, but when he was winning a lot of those, weren't they a 2A in Bassville?
Yeah.
Before they got to Jefferson Davis, But a lot of people have to do it because they may not have the athletes that he has, and so they have to come up with something to throw your game off, and so.
It works for Picayune too. And they've got a couple of D1 running backs in their stable.
Sure they do.
Yeah.
And they're dangerous in this year because of the 2.
Yeah.
If they had 1, it might not be because 1 can get exhausted toward the end of the year. But when you got 2, you're going to have somebody, one of those 2 going to be fresh.
Yeah.
When it counts.
Yeah. Who we got for our guest tonight? We talking about
Well, we've had Michael Katz on a couple times. He talked to us last football season, and he talked to us he talked to us probably in the spring about Ole Miss spring football, and he talked to us about their baseball team. And the baseball team was not doing well at the time. That first time he talked to us, and then I think we called him after the World Series, and we asked him how to turn it around, And so, but Michael's.
And I remember that explanation he gave.
And Michael is, he's in Oxford every day. He watches practice. He works for the Tupelo newspaper. He's got the pulse of the team.
Yeah.
And so he's going to fill us in with any questions that you have to talk about the Ole Miss Rebels today. And I'm sorry that we had to reschedule our guest, or not reschedule our guest, but the one we were supposed to have on tonight. But he's going to be with us next week, and I'll let you go with that. And Dr. Mark Keenum, Mississippi State, he's going to talk to us about the
CFP.
College Football Playoff.
He's on the board of governors.
He is the chairman
of the board. Well, it's got a nice ring to it.
Chairman of the board. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So he probably gets at least $25 more than the rest of us.
Well, listen, on that happy thought, let's take a break and hear from our sponsor. Then Dale and I'll be back with Michael Katz right after this break.
Phillips Building Supply in Laurel, your hometown building supply store since 1954. We are locally owned and pride ourselves on helping our customers find exactly what they need. From foundations to roofs to doors and windows, Phillips has it. For tools, hardware, lumber, and plywood, visit Phillips Building Supply.
Welcome to the show, Michael Katz from the Tupelo. What is it? It's the Northeast Daily Journal, right, Michael? Have I got that right?
Northeast Mississippi Daily Journal, correct.
Okay. That's good. And we're going to let you get all that vital information, how our people can follow you down here. I follow the, I pay the little script every week so I can get or every month, so I can get the online edition. And you guys do a great job, just not with Ole Miss, but Mississippi State. And you do a tremendous job with the high schools in that area. So we do appreciate all your coverage, because there's not many daily newspapers left in Mississippi that actually do that. So we do appreciate you and everything. Well, listen, I know you went to Atlanta this week. Did you have a good trip over?
I did. I'm always a little thrown off by any sort of time zone change, and I always forget that it is an hour ahead. So that confuses my very simple brain when I'm there for short periods of time. But it was really nice. It was a really cool stadium. I had never been to Bobby Dodd. There was actually a pretty good crowd. I wasn't really sure what to expect, kind of given where Georgia Tech is at the moment, but I think they played it smart. It was family weekend, so I think everybody came with extra people, so they filled up that stadium a little bit, but really just sort of I think the best term is shellacking of Georgia Tech. It was a good weekend if you're an Ole Miss fan, that's for sure. Well,
listen, Ole Miss seemed to dominate from the opening kickoff. I don't know if Tech really, they might have responded once there, maybe into the first quarter, second quarter. I'm not sure, but Ole Miss just 3 or 4 plays they end up scored after opening kickoff, and it was basically a couple runs and maybe one pass, and it was a touchdown, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was a minute 34 into the game. Ole Miss was already up 7-0, and then within like 5 minutes or so, it was already 14-0 because Ole Miss said SC. I'm a USC grad, and I'm on their schedule website. That's why I said SC there. Ole Miss blocked that punt and scored right after that. I kind of knew the game was probably over when. Georgia Tech actually got the ball inside of the 5-yard line. I think it was in the first quarter, and Ole Miss got a sack on 4th down. And that was kind of the moment where I kind of said, yeah, this one's probably over. And I don't think they got anywhere close to the red zone or really close to scoring again. I know we all want to talk about the quarterbacks and all that stuff, and that's partly on us because we're all curious on how that's all going to end up turning out. But, when you can run the ball the way they did for, 316 yards, I think it was, and 6 touchdowns, it really doesn't matter who your quarterback is because when you've got three running backs who are able to do what they can do, the rest will kind of figure itself out. And obviously Jackson Dart does contribute really nicely in the run game. He probably had the run of the day when he knocked over a poor Georgia Tech defender on third down on the sideline. It's the hardest hit of the day, I think. But, when you can run the way this Ole Miss team can, they're going to be in a good spot, especially with the way they're playing defense and with the special teams. I think the quarterback thing will figure itself out.
Well, do you think Jackson Dart has won the locker room yet?
I mean, if you're asking, again, it's hard because, obviously we aren't in there and all that stuff. But just from what I've seen, I don't know how it won't be Jackson Dart long term. And again, going back to that hit where he knocks the guy over, you could just sort of see everybody get really excited about that, and not just the fans, because it was fairly close to where the band and stuff was, but you could see teammates react to that too. And I think those are sort of moments where I think you sort of see someone sort of take over a locker room to an extent if he hadn't already done it. I do think there is a sort of charisma and grit to Jackson Dart that I have to imagine that his teammates really, really like.
Well, listen, I'm just asking for your opinion on this, Michael, but does Kiffin really include the OC or the quarterback's coach or who it is, or it's strictly up to Kiffin about who is under center every Saturday?
I think it's for sure a multi-person decision. I don't think that if one person wants, if Charlie Weiss Jr. wants someone and Lane wants someone else, I think there's probably a discussion. But I do think for the most part that they're probably on the same page about things, and I would have to imagine that Lane probably can turn things in a certain direction if he really wants to. But I think I would have to imagine they're probably on the same page as far as what they want or what they're seeing. But I do think it is a multi-person process and not just Lane saying, "Hey, here's what we're doing." I have to imagine Charlie Weiss Jr. has a lot of say in how it all kind of unfolds.
Well, listen, as far as your running game, I mean, you can't run the ball unless you've got some big boys up front. And I know from just, reading all of the stuff and following Ole Miss over the years that this is one of their more experienced offensive lines that they've had. Is that offensive line as good as it sounds like it is when we have 316 rushes on a Saturday afternoon?
It's hard because, and this is I guess say no offense to Georgia Tech, but that program is not in a great place right now. And yes, it's a Power 5 team. It's doing that on the road, and there's a caliber of athlete that is probably higher than what you saw against Troy and Central Arkansas. But it's going to get a lot harder from here. And Tulsa's defense is a little but you get Kentucky right after that, and that's a really good program. So I think you learn more about how good the line in the running game is a little bit later, but I think right now, they're doing. I know numbers don't always tell the whole story, but I think they've had 230 rushing yards at least in each of the 3 games, and they're not giving up sacks, and they are really doing a good job. And Nick Broker, the senior guard, was just named the SEC Lineman of the Week. And you look at that group, and the only guy who doesn't have significant playing time is left tackle Jaden Williams, and they think really, really highly of him. And then his strong play is, the reason Mason Brooks is, the Western Kentucky transfer, who I think we all thought was going to, be starting at one of the tackle spots. It has not played a ton because he's really just sort of he's looked really good and kind of surprised everybody and made it so they have to keep him in the lineup. But You look at what the line has done so far. It's been dominant, and it's like I said, it's going to get harder, but it's hard to argue against the numbers. They can only play who's on the schedule, and they have absolutely dominated in the run game, and then really the pass blocking's been pretty good too.
Michael, this is Marshall. I kind of want to flip the script a little bit here, and not really. We're talking about the offensive line. I'm going to go back to these running backs: Evans, Judkins, and Bentley. I mean, all of them had 2 touchdowns. I was watching. Of course, Evans is the lead, the bell cow for sure, but in my opinion, anyway. But I saw him a little animated down there on the sideline. After, everybody was having great success, everybody's carrying the ball good, like he might have been a little upset, I don't know. But how big a deal is it? I mean, these guys are, everybody fights for the ball. I mean, you got to have it. I mean, how are these guys getting along as far as you can tell? I know they all want to carry the ball probably every chance they get. Has that been an issue yet?
No, I don't think so. And, I think competitors, naturally competitive people are always going to want to, get the ball. But I do think that there is a pretty good camaraderie in that running back room. And, I'd agree that, Evans is, the guy. But, when you've got 2 other guys that can do the sorts of things they can do, it is interesting to sort of see how it all kind of plays out in terms of the timeshares. And I think that's kind of going to depend on a game-to-game basis and scenarios and all that stuff. But it really does sound like the running back room really enjoys seeing the other guys do the things that they've done, and they've all had really good things to say about Quinshon Judkins. And we don't talk to true freshmen, so we haven't had a chance to talk to Quinshon and won't until next season. But they've all just spoken glowingly of him, and Evans even said that he wouldn't be surprised if Judkins had better numbers than him. And I think obviously everybody wants the ball, but with this team especially, with so much depth at pretty much every spot, it's just probably not going to work that way. And so I think everybody sort of has to learn how to deal with the ball getting spread around a little bit more. I think it's with wide receivers, it's with the pass rushers, it's with the defensive backs, these spots where they have so many talented guys. It's a good problem to have, and I think in the running back room, I've definitely gotten the sense that there's a good camaraderie, and I think they're all excited to kind of see what each guy kind of does.
That's a perfect scenario. That's a good deal. Thank you for that.
So the last question about the offense, is Mingo going to be the Drummond of this year?
It kind of looks like it, and I wasn't really sure how that all was going to shape up. And of course, it remains to be seen who stays healthy, and game by game scenarios, different guys are going to get targeted. But Mingo has definitely been the most consistently targeted guy, and the guy who seems to be kind of getting, I guess, open the most. And I'm sure they'd like to see a little bit more separation from the defensive backs, but when you got guys that can make contested catches, and Dart can put it in, or Luke for that matter, can put the ball in a place where the receivers can go up and make a play, you're going to keep doing it. Now, even last year, Drummond, I don't think he was the guy anybody thought was going to be the quote-unquote guy. I think everybody kind of thought, and I think Lane said this, it was either in the spring or summer, fall camp, that everybody thought Braylon Sanders was going to be the guy, because he was the athlete who had just so much skill and was really kind of looking like he was going to break out, and then injuries happened, and it really kind of turned into Drummond being Mr. Dependable. And so, with this team, I think Mingo was the guy that in a perfect world would turn into that, but the transfers, again, it was Malik Heath from State, and Jalen Robinson from Central Florida, and Jordan Watkins from Louisville, and these guys, it was I think it was, is this going to be maybe more of a spread out team in terms of how the ball gets distributed, and is there going to be a 1,000-yard receiver? There are going to be a bunch of guys with 400 or 500 yards. I don't know if we still know the answer to that, but Mingo is really sort of, as of right now, I would say he's kind of the alpha. But Jalen Robinson didn't play against Georgia Tech. It sounds like they think he's going to be good for Tulsa, and I know he's kind of the speed threat that they were really excited about. We haven't really seen him kind of break out yet, and so when he hits his stride, maybe this changes, but. Mingo's been really good, and obviously Michael Trigg at tight end. He's had his moments, and if you've got those two guys doing what they've been doing, I think they're going to feel pretty good.
Good. All right, let's talk about the defense. The defense seemed to get after Georgia Tech the other day. Of course, when you got a big lead, you can just pin your ears back and go. But you talk about you have a lot of depth at defensive line, and the linebackers are playing a little bit better, and I think than people thought they might, based on losing what they did last year. But just what's your take on the defense overall?
I think the question coming in, it was the linebackers, and it was how do you replace the sack production of Sam Williams, who is on the Cowboys now. He made some plays yesterday on national TV, and the 12.5 sacks, it's hard to make up. But here we are, and they have 7 sacks against Georgia Tech on the road, and it was just guy after guy making a play. And we talked with Cedric Johnson, who had a sack and he also blocked the punt, and he said they feed off that. When one guy gets one, they think, okay, now it's my turn, to go do it. And I think they sort of build off that. So kind of like, the question with receiver, is it one guy or does it get spread out? I don't know if anybody had more than a sack, maybe 2, against Georgia Tech. It was just really spread out, and I think that might be how it looks. A lot of guys have sacks. In the same way that maybe it ends up being a lot of guys have, a good amount of receiving yards. And it's a good problem to have when you can take guys out and not miss a beat talent and production-wise. I think that's been a really big thing. The linebackers, Troy Brown has been as steady as I think we all kind of thought he would. Austin Keys has played really well. Chauncey Sistrunk as well. And Kari Coleman, he did leave the last game a little bit early, but it sounds like they're expecting him to play this weekend. That the linebackers have not been the sort of detriment that people might have thought it was going to be. They've been really good, and that front seven's done a really nice job of making tackles behind the line of scrimmage. I think that's where it's been probably the most, I don't know if surprising is the word, but seeing how many plays they've made behind line of scrimmage and tackles for loss, I think has been really, really good. I think the secondary was something that, if you just looked at the experience, and in addition to the new guys they brought in with Aishin Young, guys like that, I think we knew the secondary had a chance to be pretty good, and right now it is playing really, really well. It's going to be fascinating this weekend because Tulsa's got the number 1 passing offense in the country, and their quarterback's he's tied for the most touchdown passes in the country, and obviously strength of schedule. You can debate all that all you want, but I think it's going to be a really good matchup to see just how good the secondary is. But so far, the defense has done everything that's been asked of it, and I know it hasn't been the strongest opponents, but giving up 4.3 points per game, I think through 3 games, you got to feel pretty good about that.
Yeah.
Well, tell me about down the road here. We got all the reports this morning. We're going to have an early breakfast on October the 1st at 11 a.m. It just seems like if there's 2 undefeated teams playing in the SEC, that's kind of a strange time. What maybe the Ole Miss people think about that? 11 o'clock on the Kentucky.
I can tell you, all of us beat writers were thrilled because it means we get to be home for dinner.
Yes, sir.
We're always selfishly thinking like that.
Yes, sir. I've been there. Been in your shoes.
But I think, yeah, I think it was either going to be the 11 o'clock game or the CBS game, and I believe Arkansas and Alabama play that same day.
Yeah, that's
and
gonna be a
I
good
think
one.
that's going to probably get the higher billing. Whether fair or not, Alabama's always going to be a draw, and Arkansas is playing really good ball right now. So, but yeah, I mean, this is likely going to be two undefeated teams. So, and if it's anything like last year's 11 a.m. game, Ole Miss and Arkansas with that 52-51 game.
Yeah.
We should be in for a good one, but it's on ESPN, and it's weird because it's the early time, so people on the West Coast, it's like 9 a.m. for them, so they wake up and roll out of bed, and all of a sudden it's just Ole Miss playing Kentucky. I think with it being a national broadcast and it being the premier early game, I think it's a really good opportunity, and I think it's going to be a great game between two teams that do things that are a little bit different, but anytime you've got it might end up being a top 10 matchup depending on what happens this weekend, but it's going to be a top 15 matchup most likely, and I think everybody's really excited.
Michael, this is Marshall again. It's one of my, like I told you at the start of the show, my job's keeping the time, and we're out. So before we go right quick, tell us how folks can follow you so that they can keep up with what you're doing up there, Facebook or whatever addresses you got. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so you can find, we maintain a Facebook page. It's the Ole Miss Discussion with Parrish Alford and Michael Katz, and I think you can find links to that and our Mississippi State one just at the Daily Journal's general Facebook page. So if you find that, you can find all the links. If you're on other social media, I'm on Twitter as well, and you can find me at Michael L. Katz. And of course, you can go to djournal.com and find all of our stories under the Ole Miss tab.
Good deal. Well, listen, we appreciate you being with us, Michael. Hang on just a minute. We're going to take a break, but you stay with us for a minute. Like we said, we're going to take a break to hear from our sponsors, and then Dale and I'll be back with the final segment after this commercial break.
Phillips Building Supply in Laurel, your hometown building supply store since 1954. We are locally owned and pride ourselves on helping our customers find exactly what they need. From foundations to roofs to doors and windows, Phillips has it. For tools, hardware, lumber, and plywood, visit Phillips Building Supply.
Welcome back, everyone, as we wrap up tonight here with a couple of minutes. Michael does a real good job up there bringing us up to speed on what's going on in Rebel Land.
He does. Like I said, he's got that inside knowledge. He sees some of the practices, and gets to talk to the players and the coaches after the practices and after the games, and it's always good to go in the locker room, and he's taking us basically into the locker room.
Yeah, we can see what we see on the fields. Like I saw that down there with the running backs, and he answered that. That's a good thing to know. They're all together. But when you get that game, the competitive juices, man, it gets interesting. Anything you want to share with us before we go? You got it all done today? You in good shape? Happy?
I think so.
Well, you look happy.
Well, I'm just saying, I mean, you just caught me off guard there a little bit,
I caught the master off guard. Boy, I tell you what, listen here, folks. Y'all need to write that down.
All I know is I think Jackson State's got a really good football team.
Oh, well, on that happy note, it looks like our time for tonight has come to an end. Be sure to follow us on Facebook at the Brouhaha and on YouTube at the Brouhaha. And tune in next week, same Brouhaha time, same Brouhaha channel. But for now, it's time to say goodbye, Dale.
Goodbye, Dale.
And that's a wrap. Take us out of here, Jamie.
You've been listening to the Brouhaha with Dale McKee and Marshall Wood. Heard Tuesday evening, 6 p.m. on WABO. For more of the Brouhaha, follow us during the week on Facebook and WABO.